think about this. Controlled demolitions cannot be engineered and rigged in a day. It takes months. And therefore, this event must have been planned in advance.
Keep your eye on that building as they're coming down.
The building is about to blow up. Moving back. We are walking back. There's a building about to blow up.
Did they actually use the word brought down, and who was it that was telling you this?
In the fire department, and they did use the word, we're going to have to bring it down. They did use the word, we're going to have to bring it down.
Now, more on the latest building collapse in New York. You might have heard a few moments ago I was talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing, and indeed it has. Apparently that's only a few hundred yards away from where the World Trade Center towers were. And it seems that this was not a result of a new attack. It was because the building had been weakened during this morning's attacks. We'll probably find out more now about that from our correspondent, Jane Stanley. Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know. Details are very, very sketchy. There's almost a sense downtown in New York behind me, down by the World Trade Centers, of just an area completely closed off as the rescue workers try to do their job. But this isn't the first building that has suffered as a result. We know that part of the Marriott Hotel next to the World Trade Center also collapsed as a result of this huge amount of falling debris from 110 floors of the two twin towers of the World Trade Center. As you can see behind me, the Trade Center appears to be still burning. We see these huge clouds of smoke and ash, and we know that behind that there's an empty piece of what was a very familiar New York skyline, a symbol of the financial prosperity of this city, but completely disappeared now, and New York is still unable to take on board what has happened to them today.
So Tony went into a head-on collision with the BBC, and the drama occurred at Horsham Magistrates Court. Tony, I'll leave it to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening, viewers. Yeah, basically, for those of you who don't know the background to what happened, about a year or so ago, well, longer than that, in fact, I first notified the police about 9/11 in 2008, shortly prior to the NIST report, in fact, so I didn't have the freefall that James was talking about. But I sent a small dossier into my local police station, alerting them I had a copy of Loose Change in it, and I got no response. And so a couple of years ago I went in there and said, again, listen, I'd like to report a crime. And the only reason I got past the front desk, this is in Chichester in Sussex, not the biggest police station in the world, is that my father had been a detective sergeant there. And they said, well, what's your name? I said, Tony Rooke, and it's not the most common name in the world. And they said, oh, are you any relation? I said, yes, he's my dad. And he'd been a detective there for 30 years. So I actually managed to see a police officer, and I had an interview, and I sat there and told this lady all about 9/11 and various other things, but mainly tried to stay centred on the World Trade Center 7, because obviously we had the NIST report by then. She didn't take any notes, well, she took my phone number, I think that's as far as she got, and never heard another thing. In the meantime, I had notified the BBC that I wasn't going to pay their licence fee because they hadn't told the British public about the free fall of the buildings, as James has just told us about, which they're obliged to do. And there's a few people here tonight, Peter Drew, Adrian Mallet, who have sort of coordinated the campaign against the BBC, because I don't know, just out of curiosity, a little show of hands, how many people here have got a TV licence? Fascists. Right. Should all be thoroughly ashamed of yourselves and go home now, personally, but there you go. But that's what happens, and of course we go on paying it blindly. But it's their job, it's their royal charter to correct things, their editorial guidelines rather, to correct things, when, especially big scientific things, when they're aware of the information that Building 7 fell in free fall for 2.25 seconds, then they are obliged to tell you, which they haven't done. And it's a monumentally important piece of science. And so I got rather cheesed off with this, and I told them all about it. They never bothered me for a TV license, and then purely by accident one day, somebody came round to my house and asked me if I had one. Not for me, for the lady who lived there beforehand. And so I handed him one of my cards which says, don't pay the TV license, it's treason and all this kind of stuff. And the poor chap was completely mystified. But in the end, he had to report me. It was his job. Cut a long story short, again, we ended up at Horsham Magistrates Court. And the judge had asked me in the pre-trial to basically present an argument against strict liability. Now, if any of you know what strict liability is in law, basically it's your income tax, it's your council tax, it's your TV licence. There is no argument against it, and God knows I looked for a few months, and where's Martab? There's my Mackenzie friend, Mr. Aziz, who's a very eminent lawyer, represents Imran Khan, amongst other people, and has a TV licence. And we certainly couldn't find one, but we did submit to the case a very nice chap called Judge Stephen Nichols, the evidence of World Trade Center 7, the shocking propaganda campaign by the BBC contained in programmes like Conspiracy Files, Conspiracy Road Trip, which is the most abhorrent, odious bilge that's ever been constructed by a TV company, and I say this as an ex-BBC employee. It's absolutely childish, disgusting, horrible, I can't think of the adjectives, that is so unscientific, so unfair, such blatant propaganda, that on that alone you shouldn't pay your TV licence. They really, really have smeared the 9/11 truth movement and completely ignored Newtonian physics, completely ignored it. Because once you understand the basics of Newtonian physics, as James was just trying to explain to us, the 9/11 story is impossible. It's just physically impossible. And so the judge had this evidence, and his hands were tied, and he said that to me in court. I don't know if any of you went to the court case, but thank you if you did. And he said, listen, Mr. Rooke, please give me a legal argument against the strict liability. And there isn't one. Is there one, Martab? Have we found one? You have found one. Brilliant. I've seen you earlier on. And we'll have a chat later. But really, I hadn't had a TV licence since, 2006? So quite a long time. So that would normally get you a fairly hefty fine, I think I'm right in saying, for not having one for so long. And I wasn't fined anything, not a penny, absolutely not. I was given £200 court costs, which all my friends generously donated to, which was great, but wasn't fined 1 penny. It was. Thank you very much. Yeah, yes, thank you, Mother. So the judge really. There's one very awake judge in this country, we certainly know that. I was given a 6-month conditional discharge, which means that I have to behave myself for 6 months, otherwise it comes back to haunt me. I'm not going to buy a TV licence, everyone knows I'm not going to buy a TV licence. The prosecutor for TV licensing, I won't mention his name, actually put some money in my donations pot because he'd seen the evidence. Obviously he has to see the evidence. And he'd seen some little films I'd done on 9/11 and some more serious ones. Is that Tom Secker over there? Hello, Tom, and some proper documentaries by people like Tom. And so he knew as well. And I did say to him outside the court, I said, what do you think about it? And he said, I'm not allowed to say. And it wasn't, oh no, this is nonsense. I mean, he knows. People know. Once you've confronted them with the evidence, people know. They understand. But it's what I call the Father Christmas syndrome. And I was talking to my aunt earlier on about this. Children, if you tell children that Father Christmas doesn't exist, they won't buy it for about maybe 6 months or a year. They just can't get it into their head that this nice, kindly old guy comes along and gives you gifts, and it's actually mum and dad. But it's exactly the same with grown-ups. If you tell them that the government hurt you, 7/7, 9/11, etc., they just can't take it in. Even if you give them incontrovertible evidence, and that is incontrovertible evidence, Building 7, which I'll move on to in a minute. So you have this, what I call the Father Christmas syndrome. I am now of the opinion that it is a waste of time trying to wake up the public. It is a waste of time. Don't bother. It's not going to happen.
We've already woken up as many as could be woken up.
Well, all of us in this room are awake, but there's an awful lot of people out there who are not. I don't think we should bother trying anymore. Who you do need to wake up is your police force and your army. If you don't wake them up, because I can't arrest Tony Blair, you can't arrest Tony Blair, people have tried it, God knows. We've had the Malaysian war tribunals, etc. But if you can get yourselves down your police stations, and you should, I mean, I'm not going to sound like a self-righteous pillock here, but I'm going to. If you have a TV licence, why? You are funding your own downfall. It is absolute social suicide. Stop doing it. Stop doing it. If you can stop paying your taxes, stop doing it, because you are funding the molestation of your own children, you're funding the deaths of your own children abroad. It's absolute madness. So you can't sit there and say, I'm a 9/11 activist, if you're funding them. It's bonkers. Absolutely bloody bonkers. So please stop doing it. So as an outcome of the court case, and please get down your police station, because they are not stupid. They do realise, but you have to sit them down for maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes. My father's a copper. My sister's a copper. My brother-in-law was a copper. And I have done it with them, and the penny takes a little while to drop, but it does drop eventually. When they realise what free fall is, the implications of free fall, which is basically fresh air, and 100 foot of that building all the way around had to disappear at some stage, and you can only do that by blowing it up. When it comes down to that sort of high school sort of physics that we were talking about, then they understand. And then the implications start kicking in. But you have to go to your police station.
How many London police genuinely know about 7/7?
How many police know about 7/7? I really couldn't comment on that, Paul. You might have to talk to someone like Tony Farrell.
However many do know about it, let's say it's 200, and some include senior officers, they haven't really done anything about it, have they?
No, they haven't. If they're serving police officers, that's another question, which kind of gives me a sort of neat segue, because what I want to do next is, and it does involve this building in fact, I mean, I'm personally trying to raise funds for a movie. We've got £3 so far. I did an interview on the Alex Jones show, which is incredible. It's just like a license to print cash. Fortunately, I'm not going to go down the pub and spend it, but we want to make a movie called Incontrovertible, and I have made a list of all the NARPO members, which is National Association of Retired Police Officers. Get in touch with these people, and I'm doing it in association with architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth, people like Peter Drew and Adrian Mallet. We're going to get in touch with these guys. We're going to invite them to Conway Hall, main hall, next year. Sit them down. We'll pay for their expenses. We'll pay for their hotel, the travelling, etc. But that's it. Sit them down. Give them the same evidence that the judge saw at Horsham and that we're all aware of, and everyone's been aware of for some time now. Film them and get their verdict. Once we can get their verdict, then we'll go to serving police officers with that information and say, listen, these are your guys. And we'll get some retired judges as well. And I've already got a small queue. I've already got enough to do a jury. I've got 12 already. So please, if you can, A, donate to my film, he says in a shameless plug, but 2, get down your police station, because we don't need any more research on 9/11. We've got it. Building 7 is it. You get that into court, you can win, but we need to get it into court, and we need to have police backup, and we need the CPS as well. That's going to be very difficult because they're bent as hairpins, allegedly. But please, if you can do that, stop paying your licence, stop paying whatever tax you can. The country won't collapse. The country's already collapsed. They've already done that. Stop paying your tax. It's not going to make any difference. The banks have already ruined it. Well, I mean, obviously I can appreciate it's difficult for income tax. Okay, Ian. Income tax is difficult. TV licence is a tax. Stop paying that. Object to your council tax if you can.
So why don't you take the same route as Tony Farrell in your court case, where Tony Farrell said he didn't wish to fund terrorism?
Yeah.
Couldn't you use the same defence?
I have. I gave Tony the idea. Section 15, Article 3. That was that's the defence I used against the BBC. Well, because it's strict liability, for some reason the judge sort of seemed to push that to one side. But me doing it on my own is not enough. If everybody starts doing it, it will make a difference.
It's law not to fund terrorism.
This is what I thought. Maybe you should speak to Martab over there. He's a lawyer. For some reason, the judge wouldn't have it. And I have 2 letters from the Home Office. Okay. All right. Thank you very much indeed. That's my little bit. Thank you.